did you actually take that to the
This
poll?
shirt, did I wear this to
Yeah.
the polls? No, and this is one of my tips. You shouldn't wear anything campaign related, nothing with like a candidate's like name or anything partisan on it to the polls. But
Is
also,
that
I was reading that you can't wear something that's issue based. Like there was a story from the Texas Tribune about a woman who wore a shirt to the polls that said "Vote for God," and she got kicked out. And last I checked, God wasn't running for office, but it was perceived as being political somehow. And so,
wow?
yeah, so just to be safe, like don't wear your defund the wall shirt, don't wear anything with a candidate's name on it, don't wear anything issue based, even if it's like this doesn't have anything candidate related on it, but it can be perceived as political.
Is so I thought there was a rule on that, right? Like there
There
is
is,
a rule that you
yes.
can get kicked out.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's called electioneering. And so that's why you only see like political signs a certain distance away from the polls. Like they can't be within, I don't know what the distance is,
I think it
100
was
feet
like,
or
yeah,
100
something like
yards or
that.
something. Yeah, and so it's the same thing with wearing things to the polls. And you're also not supposed to be, I think, really like talking about it when you're in line. Like you're not supposed to be
Hmm.
like encouraging people to vote for a certain candidate or something like that. Like that can get you kicked out.
I guess let me introduce it, right? This is Virginia, and you're very
Sure.
vocal, and you're very, I guess you're well versed in the voting topic, right? So
Thanks.
that
I try.
it's it's something I want to do for the next few weeks as we ramp up to election day. Is just kind of get tips from people out there voting who have voted, tips and tricks on it, and stuff that kind of just get us talking about it, right? So you voted yesterday, right?
Yeah.
You went out,
First
voted
day of
yesterday, early
voting.
voting, first day of voting. How was the social distancing and like that whole voting while we're in a
It was
pandemic? How did that
good.
go?
Yeah, it's just like going to the grocery store. If you have felt safe enough to go to the grocery store, it's just like that. It's probably even safer, I would say. At least my experience was good. I mean, they had, those little stickers on the ground that are spaced 6 feet apart. Everyone there was wearing masks. I realize it might not be like that every place in Texas. I think in Laredo, we're pretty good about wearing masks. And so, everybody was good. All the poll workers, they had on masks, they had on face shields, they had plexiglass in front of their workstations. So they're very protected and they're trying to protect voters as well. Um, but yeah, I would say all the voters were pretty respectful and keeping their distance as well. I think the one area where it gets a little tricky in the process is like after they take your temperature, you walk like a little closer to the poll workers so that you can, give them your ID and get processed and get your ballot. And that's where you get a little closer to people. And so I
Okay.
feel like, I feel like the county probably struggled with finding places that had like a large enough space for them to really be able to space out the poll workers and the voters when they go to interact with the poll workers. But for the most part, when you're standing in line, the spacing is pretty good.
Well, I
And
mean,
oh, and I think, sorry, just the one other thing I wanted to add is that they're offering curbside voting at a few locations. And so if you're a person that's immunocompromised or you live with someone who's immunocompromised, that's a really good option.
yeah, that is actually pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And so trying to like space out so many people, I don't think I mean, I think they knew it was going to be busy this year more
Hmm.
than, previous years or previous elections, but I didn't think they knew that there was going to be lines on all the way out like that for early voting.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes the lines longer. And just like, like with everything else COVID related, everything's just a little slower.
Yeah. Yep.
We're just taking our times more.
Any you mentioned those that tip, don't take anything, divisive or
Don't
political
wear
while
anything issue related or anything campaign related. Yeah.
any other tips you got for people while they're going out
Yeah,
there?
so what happened to me when I went to vote, and keep in mind, this is like, I was like the seventh person to vote at the Webb County Administrative Building. So I was one of the first voters, and they gave me the wrong ballot. So I was like working through the ballot, and I live in a rural part of the county, so I don't vote in the city elections. And I was like, it's weird that there's so many city office elections on my ballot and like all the propositions. I was like, this was not on my sample ballot. And so I looked at the top left-hand corner of my ballot, and I realized it had the wrong precinct number on it. And so I took it back to the poll worker, and she checked my little. They have like a little sticker that they print out
Right.
after you check in to vote, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I got that wrong. I'm so sorry." So I think that's something for voters to be aware of. And I realize a lot of people don't know what precinct they live in, and so here's how you find out. You can look on your voter registration card if you still have that readily accessible. It'll tell you your precinct number, and that's how they can give you the right ballot. And if you don't have your voter registration card readily available, you can go to the Texas Secretary of State's website and check it. And it's really easy to check. All you need is like your last name and your date of birth and maybe your address. And so it's really easy to look it up.
Yeah, I always have to look for it every year, you know, that you go, because I forget the stupid number. And now
And if you moved, then
I
it
remember
probably
it.
changed,
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that is important. Now, it's good that you mentioned the sample ballot because you had looked at your sample ballot prior to, right? So, and I think that's something that a lot of people need to do. Just don't go in there and think I'm just going to vote for the presidential election, and then you have like all these other ones, and you're like, oh crap, well, what is this, right? There's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo in those stupid ballots. So, how can you decipher that? Like, how can we just kind of put it in simple terms for somebody taking, you know, those or looking at those
a few points on
bills, amendments,
propositions. Usually they're propositions. Sometimes they're called ballot measures. There's technical terms for these things. You're right. It's a lot of jargon. I don't know all of it, even as a person who's like a relatively informed voter. But I think there's a few things that I want to say about sample ballots. First of all, yes, you should download the sample ballot for your precinct before you go to the polls. You know, take a week or something to do your research. Because number one, there's a ton of down ballot political races that are extremely important to vote in. This is how we create a pipeline for leadership that translates all the way to Congress, state government, and eventually to the presidency. And so it's really important that we're carefully choosing all of the politicians that are in these down ballot races. Like one of the really important races that I'm following this election season and that I hope other people follow is a statewide race for the Railroad Commissioner of Texas. So a lot of people don't know this, but the Railroad Commission doesn't actually regulate railroads. They regulate the oil and gas industry. And Webb County is a super heavy oil and gas production county. And so it's really important that we're picking somebody we want in that position. It matters to me because I'm a climate voter. So I want to stop climate change. So I want to make sure that somebody at the Railroad Commission cares about that too. And then, you know, other than like statewide positions, we're looking at, you know, city council members, county commissioners, judges, like all of this stuff has a profound impact on our day-to-day lives. So it's really important that we look at those down ballot elections. And then the propositions. So I didn't have to vote on the propositions. I didn't get to vote on the propositions because I don't live in the city. But I would encourage folks to do research by Googling them. There's a lot of groups that have come out with opinions about the ballot propositions and whether or not you should even vote on them. I've been hearing people say that there wasn't enough dialogue or conversation about these propositions. I'm not sure if that's true, so I just want to encourage folks to like look at the other information that's out there. If you know somebody who has an opinion about it, find out why. And I also think that even if you're approaching your sample ballot and you feel really confused and it feels really lengthy, take the time to read it and start to understand some of the issues, even if you feel like you can't fully wrap your head around it, because voting is a skill. And learning how this system works is a skill, and year after year, you're going to get better at it. And so don't feel bad if you don't feel completely up on every issue right away, but do work at it, do read the whole sample ballot and start to learn how it works.
Yeah, because I mean that's the only way you're going to find out if you align with these things or not, right? And if you're for or you're against it. So yeah, I was taking a look at it and I'm kind of like, first of all, it's like I said, it's a bunch of legal jargon. And then they have this huge print over it that says sample ballot. And you're like, well, what does that say? Or what? So
It's hard to
it
read.
just, yeah, it's hard to read.
Yeah,
But
I
anyways,
yeah, I wish that our county elections administration did some things a little bit differently. Like, yeah, I feel like the sample ballots are not super legible. I wish that they made it easier to look up your precinct number. I wish that they provided a map of all the early voting locations and election day voting locations. That's another tip that I want to share with people is in Webb County, and this is different for every county in Texas, you can vote anywhere you want in the county during early voting, which started yesterday and ends on October 30th. But on election day, November 3rd, you have to vote in your precinct. So it makes it a lot more difficult to vote if you wait until election day. And so for early voting, I went ahead and went on Google Maps yesterday and I created a map that's publicly accessible of all the early voting locations. And I'll send you the bit.ly later, Jay, and you can like post it whenever you share this information.
okay.
But it's really
Yeah,
easy.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Lastly, what do we need to take when we go out there?
You got to take your photo ID. You actually aren't legally required to wear a mask into the polls, but please do. This is the
Yeah.
life or death situation for a lot of people, and so please wear a mask to the polls. But that's basically all you need. I mean, they have pencils there. Some folks are saying like take your own pencil so you don't have to touch another
Right.
pencil. They did have hand sanitizer at the polls when I went, but you know, it's a good idea to carry around some hand sanitizer with you in case the place you go to runs out. But yeah, really all you need is the proper ID. And if you're concerned about whether you have the right kind of photo ID, you can check votetexas.gov and find more information about that.
Awesome. Thank you. And maybe some water and a snack because you might be in line outside.
Yeah, so I went early. I was so excited to vote yesterday. I showed up half an hour before the polls opened, but my brother went in the middle of the day to the Del Mar location and he waited for an hour in like 90-degree heat. So yeah, be prepared. You probably are going to wait in line at some point, but you have less of a chance of lines if you vote during early voting. So really want to encourage folks to do that.
Virginia, thanks a lot. And thank you for providing the Zoom link there for me because that was a rookie mistake. I don't normally use Zoom and I switched over, or I wanted to switch over to it because I typically use Skype, but nobody uses Skype anymore. So.
Yeah, I hear you.
Anyways.
Well, good talking to you and thanks for getting the word out about voting.
Yeah, for sure.